I don't know why I played Precious Lord, take my hand. But a couple of months ago, I was doing a concert, and I played Embraceable You. And I hadn't played Embraceable You in years, and I didn't know why. And after the concert, a guy came, and he said, there was a time, during the concert, he was asking, he said, I wanted to just jump up and ask you to play that song. So I guess I heard it. So I'm not sure who Precious Lord was for, but whoever it is. What a wonderful world. What's that song about? In one or two words, anybody? What's that song about?
Creation.
Creation, Gratitude. Love, positivity. I love the song because I think it reflects one aspect of a paradox of life. And that is that life is beautiful. Life at its core, even in the midst of death and disease and destruction and problems and issues and everything. The essence of life, and that's what we're taught in all the world spiritual traditions, you know, that no matter what is going on, no matter what the appearance, no matter what the surface, that in the depths, life is good. And that song affirms that. The second song I'm going to play, or the next song, affirms the other side of the paradox. And that is, this is called Fragile, and it's by the pop composer Sting. This song came out in the 90s. And this song was written as a direct response to the murder of a young American who had gone into Colombia to work serving the poor, and he was killed as a result of everything that was going on there. And so Sting wrote this song, and it's called Fragile. And the last phrase goes, how fragile we are, fragile we are. If rain falls like tears from the sky, how fragile we are. And so What a Wonderful World is about celebrating every moment of this delicious miracle called life. And Fragile is about recognizing that in that beauty, life passes. We never know when our last breath will occur. And so our job, if we choose to accept it, is to suck the marrow out of life, to live fully, to love fully, so that every moment really matters. So this is Fragile by Sting. I interpret the word contemplation. Today is a concert for contemplation. Not in the terms of the music all being meditative and slow and so forth, but the idea of contemplation is the idea of listening inwardly. And one of my desires for today's experience is for the music to assist you in listening inwardly to your own soul, the sound of your own soul. You know, we live in a world, there's so much clutter, so much noise, there's so many people and things and systems and businesses and so forth clamoring for our attention. But very often it's more difficult to go to that still, spacious, quiet place inside, where we can listen to the voice within. We can listen to the voice of intuition, the voice of God, the voice of Christ, the voice of love. And so I invite you in our time today to take a deep breath. Everybody take a breath. And release. And just settle into this moment. There's nowhere to go, nothing to do. Let go of the past, let go of the future. And really savor right here and now. I grew up in Georgia, a little town, southeast corner of Georgia, Brunswick, Georgia. And I went to a Methodist church. And the Methodist church, we would have Sunday services. And my mother played organ. She still does. She's right here. And When I was 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, I have a confession to make. The sermons were not always theologically inspiring. I did not always leave church with a new sense of the power and the majesty of the scriptures. But there's something that my mother would do. And I don't think I've told the story in her presence before, but I've told it in private. At the end of every church service, there'd be a postlude. Church is over, we said the benediction, and there would just be maybe 3 or 4 minutes of silence with music. Right? And she would play hymns like Peace Be Still, or In the Garden, or Sweet Hour of Prayer, whatever. And a lot of the times, the greatest sermon I ever heard was there. It was in the soft, tranquil, deep, soulful beauty of those hymns. And I learned a lot. The reason that I play lyrically is totally because of my mother, because she taught me through example. She said, play the words, not the music. Play the text. And just allow the notes to travel as expressions and emanations of the text. Give me an example, then I'm going to play a couple of hymns. How great thou art. You all know that. The chorus of How Great Thou Art, as the music goes, kind of goes like this. That's what's on the page. But I'm going to play it. I don't want to embarrass it too much right now. But I'm going to play it the way my mother played it. And you're going to hear the difference. I'm going to play a couple of others. Because it speaks to this really important point. In The Little Prince, the book The Little Prince, the author says, it is only with the heart that we may see rightly. That which is the most important is invisible to the eye. The whole notion of contemplation, listening, is all about going beneath the surface. You see somebody with your eyes, and they have hair or not, they're tall or short, they're brown or white or whatever. But the eye of contemplation sees beneath that. It endeavors to see them as God sees them, as infinite, eternal, beautiful, spiritual beings. And so one of the things I learned, when I do workshops for musicians, I say you don't understand, the notes are not the music. The notes are a symbol system that's at best a poor approximation of this invisible, essential something that is music. And if you really go deeply enough beneath the notes, and if you're lucky, and you have grace, a light on your shoulder, then you can actually get to the music itself. So here's how my mother played How Great Thou Art, so you can get music. I'll just play the chorus. Feel it, right? Thank you. So I'm going to end my first set with a couple of favorite hymns. And you will recognize, I think I'm going to play In the Garden, which is a song. How many of you know that hymn? Yeah, it's all about even if you strip the specifics of theology away from it. It's all about inwardness. You know, the German theologian Meister Eckhart, who, as is the case of most of the great saints, was thrown out of the church because he had his own internal experience of the power and presence of God, and it didn't necessarily agree with all the other folks. So, but he had this idea that the most important thing in spiritual life is to cultivate what he called interiority. Interiority is the inner intimacy with the presence of God, which cannot come simply from reading or from doing. It has to come from contemplation. And Meister Eckhart talked about this intimacy that the In the Garden, the hymn speaks of, and he walked with me and he talked with me and so forth. So as I play the song, I invite you to enter into your own chamber, however you experience that, and open your own mind and heart to walk with, talk with, experience God in your own way.
I would like to dedicate this part of the program to Colleen Appling, who was a very active member of our church for 56 years and who died on Wednesday. I'll never forget, it was our first Jazz Sunday, and Harry was our performer, and Colleen was reading the text, the lesson that morning, and Harry began quietly playing beneath her words, and she stopped and she said, "I think I've died and gone to heaven." And so for that reason, I dedicate it to Colleen. The story of Christ is where most of us started from, though we've come so far since then that there are times when you'd hardly know it to listen to us, and when we hardly know it ourselves. The story of Christ is what once, somehow and somewhere, we came to Christ through. Maybe it happened little by little, a face coming slowly into focus that we'd been looking at for a long time without really seeing it. A voice gradually making itself heard among many other voices, and in such a way that we couldn't help listening after a while, couldn't help trying somehow, in some unsatisfactory way, to answer. As Emily Dickinson did, I think, when she wrote, "I never saw a moor, I never saw the sea, yet I know how the heather looks and what a wave must be. I never spoke with God, nor visited heaven, yet certain am I of the spot as if the chart were given. I never spoke with God, nor visited in heaven, yet certain am I of the spot as if the chart were given." Mary Oliver's answer was whimsical. Who made the world? Who made the swan and the black bear? Who made the grasshopper? This grasshopper, I mean, the one who's flung herself out of the grass, the one who is eating sugar out of my hand, who is moving her jaws back and forth instead of up and down, who is gazing around with her enormous and complicated eyes. Now she snaps her wings and floats away. I don't know exactly what a prayer is. I do know how to pay attention, how to fall down into the grass, how to kneel down in the grass, how to be idle and blessed, how to stroll through the fields, which is what I've been doing all day. Tell me, what else should I have done? Doesn't everything die at last? And too soon? Tell me, what is it you plan to do with your one wild and precious life? Wendell Berry. When despair for the world grows in me, and I wake in the night at the least sound, in fear of what my life and my children's lives may be, I go and lie down where the wood drake rests in his beauty on the water. I go and lie down where the wood drake rests in his beauty on the water. And the great heron feeds. I come into the peace of wild things who do not tax their lives with forethought of grief. I come into the presence of still water, and I feel above me the day-blind stars waiting with their light. The day-blind stars waiting with their light. For a time, I rest in the grace of the world and am free. I rest in the grace of the world and am free. I hate to take you from Wendell Berry's rest into these earlier, darker voices that roar at us from the 16th century. Like John Donne, in his continuous battle within himself between his very secular self and his very sacred self. Batter my heart, three-personed God, for you as yet but knock, breathe, shine, and seek to mend, that I may rise and stand, o'erthrow me, and bend your force to break, blow, burn, and make me new. I, like a usurped town to another do, labor to admit you. But oh, to no end, to no end. Reason, your viceroy in me, should defend, but is captive and proves weak or untrue. Yet dearly I love you, and would be loved fain, but am betrothed into your enemy. Divorce me, untie or break that knot again, take me to you, imprison me, for I, except you enthrall me, never shall be free, nor chaste, except you ravish me. Shakespeare, too, talks himself out of superficiality and bargains, makes a deal with God in his sonnet 146. Poor soul, the center of my sinful earth. Fooled by those rebel powers that thee array, why dost thou pine within and suffer dearth, painting thy outward walls so costly gay? Why so large cost, having so short a lease, dost thou upon thy fading mansions spend? Shan't worms, inheritors of this excess, eat up thy charge? Isn't this thy body's end? Then, soul, live thou upon thy servant's loss, and let that pine to aggravate thy store, buy terms divine in selling hours of dross. Within be fed, without be rich no more. So shalt thou feed on death that feeds on men, and death, once dead, there's no more dying then. Finally, to the greatest source of conversations with God, the Bible, the book of Psalms. David, Psalm 27. The Lord is my light and my salvation. Whom shall I fear? The Lord is the strength of my life. Of whom shall I be afraid? When the wicked, even mine enemies and my foes, came upon me to eat up my flesh, they stumbled and fell. Though an host would encamp against me, my heart shall not fear. Though war shall rise against me, in this will I be confident. One thing have I desired of the Lord, that I will seek after, that I may dwell in the house of the Lord all the days of my life, to behold the beauty of the Lord, and to inquire in his temple. To inquire in his temple. For in the time of trouble he shall hide me in his pavilion. In the secret of his tabernacle shall he hide me. He shall set me upon a rock. When thou saidst, seek ye my face, my heart said unto thee, thy face, Lord, will I seek. Teach me thy way, O Lord, and lead me in a plain path because of mine enemies. I had fainted unless I had believed to see the goodness of the Lord in the land of the living. Wait on the Lord. Be of good courage, and he shall strengthen thine heart. Wait, I say, on the Lord. As we began, we'll be closing with the prose of Frederick Buechner from a room called Remember. Our stories and Christ meet as well as diverge, and when they diverge, it is his they diverge from, so that by his absence as well as by his presence in our lives, we know, as John Donne did, who he is and who we are, and it in us to be Christ to each other, and maybe in some unimaginable way to God too. That's what our story is, finally. We have it in us to work miracles of love and healing, as well as to have them worked upon us. We have it in us to bless with him and forgive with him and heal with him, and once in a while, maybe even to grieve with some measure of his grief at another's pain, and to rejoice with some measure of his rejoicing at another's joy, almost as if it were our own. And who knows but that in the end, by God's mercy, the two stories will converge for good and all. And though we would never have had the courage or the faith or the wit to die for him, any more than we've ever managed to live for him very well either, his story will come true in us at last. And in the meantime, this side of paradise, it is our business to speak with our hearts, to bear witness to, and live out of, and live toward, and live by the true word of his holy story as it seeks to stammer itself forth through the holy stories of each of us. Amen.
As we transition to this final section of our performance, I invite you into a different experience of music. Very often when we listen to music, we listen, especially for musicians, sing and so forth. We listen for form and structure and melody and contrast and tension and release and so forth. Well, for these next few minutes, this next 10 minutes or so, I invite you to listen not to the notes, but to listen to the silence underneath them. I'm going to invite you in this last section to enter into your own inner place of prayer. I invite you to reflect on whatever your soul's need might be today. It might have to do with physical healing or emotional or forgiveness or whatever. But what I've experienced over my own lifetime of exploring this miracle of music is that music can open a door to a deeper experience of life. There's an old saying that the reason human beings build churches, cathedrals, mosques, synagogues, and the reason human beings make music together is that angels want to dwell among us, but they can't, because all of the garbage and the fear and the anger and the lust and the greed and all that stuff is like air pollution for the angels. But when we create sacred spaces, and we can come together in song, and we come together in worship, it's like air filter for the angels. And the air is clean, they can come and be with us. So whatever your particular belief or idea is about those sort of things, I invite you to allow the music to take you inside. And I'll tell you in advance, if you listen for musical stuff, elements, you're going to be bored the next few minutes. Here's why. Because there's this specific music is very repetitive, very opening, spacious. But if you listen underneath it, you'll find there's a gift waiting for you. And then after this period of purely contemplative music, I'm going to close with a piece, and you'll recognize it. This is a piece called The Awakening Heart. It was written for my encounter with the Dalai Lama last year when he came here to Louisville. And in our prayer, as we prepare for that, I invite you also to hold those who are suffering. Right now, the Buddhist monastery at 4 o'clock today is holding an hour of prayer for those who are dealing with the Ebola epidemic. I invite you to hold those of your friends and loved ones who are ill, who are challenged, whatever. Hold the world in prayer, that we might create an air filter for the angels to dwell not only among us, but among all. So I invite you to just for a moment put your hands on your heart, close your eyes, and just take a breath. And in whatever way is appropriate for you, just make known to God, to the soul, to the Creator, your need right now, whatever that need might be. It might be for faith, or for healing, or for strength, or for insight or wisdom. It might be focused on another person's need. But just take a moment and feel into that. And in just a moment, the music will begin. I invite you to stay inside as this next section of music plays. to take what you've experienced in the music today and take it out with you into the world and be kind to yourself and be kind to one another. So I believe that's the ultimate gift we can give. So we have a round of applause for Jane.